How are you doing? Have you been enjoying martech Next? This has been fantastic. I've been at martech here for a while. Short versions, I've been writing this Chief Martech blog for almost now 18 years, looking at the intersection of marketing and technology. But I've also been a practitioner in the field. I spent many years building one of the early web technology development companies in the late 90s, early 2000s. I built a SaaS platform to let marketers create interactive content called Ion Interactive that we built up and sold in 2017. I joined HubSpot at that point in time to build out their platform ecosystem. One of the things that any of you who have been in martech for a while know, one of our perennial challenges has been the integration across this landscape, and so that's always been a personal mission of mine. Yeah, written a couple books, and also with my collaborator here, Franz, we've done some things on this landscape that I'll get to in a bit. But I want to talk today about this transformation that AI is bringing in the roles of marketers. I think the way I would frame it is it's less about being marketing managers and increasingly now more about being marketing makers. And to sort of set this up, I want to take us back 60 years or so. In the 60s and the 70s, and the way in which slide presentations got created. People would have to actually lay out, on these cardboard boards. They'd use X-Acto knives and rubber cement. Who here has even heard of rubber cement anymore? Sticking things together. Then each one of these boards, they would take a film, a camera photograph of. That would then get processed into 35 millimeter slides. You then put them in the projector. This process took weeks. Did not allow for any sort of editing on the fly, very expensive. Part of it, we just didn't see a lot of slide presentations. And then, 1980s, PowerPoint got created. PowerPoint was actually originally created for the Mac at the time before it got acquired by Microsoft. And then things kind of got wacky for a while. Some of the latest stats that I have heard is every day there's something like 30 million PowerPoint presentations given. I mean, it is crazy. Now, I know probably the natural reaction to that is that a good thing? How many of these presentations really should have been given? And as you're watching this one, we'll let you, decide, vote with your feet. But it really did change this dynamic at which things were being created. Just the sheer volume and the speed and the malleability, the ability for anyone to do it. Now, again, anyone could use PowerPoint. Not everyone could create really good-looking slides. One of the things that has been really interesting to see was this new generation of AI tools. One of them here, Gamma, for essentially using AI to help create slides. And just being able to do these incredibly beautiful decks. I was went into it, I asked, okay, if I want to create one, hey, I want to generate a new deck. It asked me, hey, do you even want to give it a topic? It can help get an outline together. Yeah, well, creative things marketers can build on their own with AI. It took its first stab at an outline. I could edit this to my heart's content. And then, okay, what sort of format would you like to this? There are some visual templates. If you have your own brand, you can set your own template. So every time people use this, it's going to be, in the brand the way you'd like it to appear. And that goes off and creates it. Now, again, AI, as I suspect many of you have had this experience with a lot of these AI tools. It's about 80, 90% there. This thing, when it first created, it's well, wait a second. Yeah, some of these slides look like 16 by 9 slides. Some of them look like some incredibly new dimension that's never been seen in the slide industry before. But I asked him, can you make all of them 16 by 9? And it's oh, okay, fine. I was just pulling your leg. Yeah, these things have a sense of humor. That's nice. But it doesn't just stop with the creating of slides for these presentations. Now, I went ahead and I downloaded it. I'm bring it into PowerPoint. I want to be able to edit it from here. And it's no problem. So I play around with a lot of these AI tools to see, well, what else can it help you do with presentations? And one of them is, have any of you played with Suno, the sort of thing for creating, songs? And like, this is fun to play with, but one of your natural reactions, my natural reaction was probably, well, that doesn't really have a professional use case. But I was thinking about it. How many of you have been in these webinars where you know this script? Like, all right, we're going to start the webinar in just a minute. Just give it a minute, waiting for everyone else to show up, and then we'll begin. And like, it's kind of a bit of an awkward silence. So I was like, hey, can you create a catchy pop song, play at the beginning of a martech webinar, letting attendees know we'll begin in just a minute. And it does.
The screen is glowing bright today.
Sorry, you didn't need to see that.
Just sit tight, we're on the brink. Grab that coffee, take a drink. Hold on, we're almost there.
All right. Now, this would be the sort of thing, like, it's not that you couldn't have produced music before, but like, it never would have ever made sense to like, oh yeah, we want to create some sort of throwaway song that, we can use at the beginning of the webinar. Did that for free. 30 seconds, I had it, plug it in, it's worth a laugh. So Franz and I, twice a year, we do presentations. We do a report and we do a presentation around it. In the spring, it's the state of martech. It's when we release the yearly martech landscape. We've been using a platform called Goldcast for that. And one of the things that Goldcast has now done is as you're creating, as you're recording or presenting these sessions, it not only automatically records it, but it'll actually be in a mode where it's like, okay, it's listening and it's automatically creating like social excerpts and social clips that can be formatted for it. I didn't have to do anything for this. I actually went and I'm like, oh wow, that clip looked kind of nice. I pull it up.
I would want to share with you is we've started calling these things, instead of systems of record and systems of engagement, we've really tried to reframe it as like systems of knowledge, right? Because with AI...
So, admittedly, one Scott Brinker on stage at a time is, yeah, enough. But again, this would be one of these things like, for me, okay, maybe I have some ability to actually do a presentation, on the webinar, but this process of like generating all these additional social assets and making sure they're done well, I mean, right, for me to do that and figure it out would have taken traditionally a fair amount of time, or I would have been hiring someone else to help me do that, and to now have these things just automatically generated be pretty darn good. Now, I'm not saying that someone else couldn't actually have done it much better, but again, it's sort of like that Suno song, it's like these templates that get created with things like Gamma, is just sort of the baseline level of capabilities it gives anyone is really pretty spectacular.
Welcome to the debate. Today we are examining one of the most significant architectural challenges.
On here. You probably played around a bit with Notebook LM. So again, we took the report, we threw it into Notebook LM. It can create things like the interactive podcast. It can create a quiz. In fact, it's created this quiz. According to the State of MarTech report, what is the total number of marketing technology solutions mapped in the 2025 landscape? Your choices are 9,932, 11,038, 14,106, or 15,384. Anyone want to take a... See, this is a martech room. Of course you guys get this. All right. What's the core concept of martech's law? Marketing organizations must adopt new technologies exponentially to keep pace. I'm going to say that one. No, not quite. Technology changes exponentially, organizations change logarithmically. But for me to be able to like pull this out, again, just the speed at which this stuff happens. Again, it's not that it couldn't have been done before, but the speed and the accessibility of it is radically different. And if you sort of look at this just in the context of doing presentations, from like the 1970s to here we are in the 2020s, it was literally something, any presentation like this would have been weeks of work. And now we get to a mode where it like comes down to literally minutes of creating some of these things. But it's not just about the acceleration of the speed. I would argue, perhaps as a counter-narrative to some of the debate out there, that this actually expands the range of creative freedom. I'm in that camp where I don't see AI as inherently something that kills creativity. I think it actually enables creativity for people who had all sorts of ideas that they never would have even been able to like conceive of a way to instantiate into the world, that now they have a shot at doing that. To me, one of this like recurring themes I see across the AI environment is this shift from, a world where we've generally had to deal with scarcity on so many of these things to a world where we increasingly are dealing with abundance. It sounds good, but as any of you who are in the battle for content marketing know, it also has its own challenges. Well, speaking of challenges with abundance, that feels like the perfect segue into the crazy martech landscape. So I've been doing this here for, 14 years now. The first version I did of this in 2011. I was really simply trying to like persuade senior marketing executives that they needed to bring more technology talent into the marketing organization because they were just becoming more dependent on technology to execute their mission. And so that landscape was just sort of a way to like, almost like an exhibit A of like, just take a look at all the different things in your org that are now being powered by these tools. And it had, I think, largely the effect I was hoping it would. People were sort of like, wow, there's that many martech solutions out there. Surely, with 150 in the market, this will have to consolidate dramatically. If only. And then year over year, for a while, it was just growing exponentially. This really got out of hand. Franz and I started teaming up, in 2022 on this. And boy, if you haven't yet had a chance to talk with Franz about like the entire like infrastructure that he's built around how this thing is produced now, it's kind of crazy. I know this isn't really readable. That's better. We really should have some sort of game where I'm like, okay, if anyone can tell me the third company on the second, all right, now, drinking game for another time. Whenever we release this, people really are pretty insightful about like, just the impact this has on their lives, and I think that often sums it up. All right. Do all of you follow Tom Fishburne, Marketunist? Okay, good. You're now permitted to stay. If for whatever reason you don't, take away any one thing from my presentation, go to marketunist.com, subscribe. This man has more like sensibility and insight into the reality of marketing than just about any of us. Now the thing about that martech landscape is it is incredibly deceiving in the sense that every one of those microdots is equally unreadable. That's not actually how the industry is structured, of course, right? We've got some very, very large public companies that I think of as being like in the head, of this like long tail, just in their sheer like market presence and revenue. You've got hundreds of companies that are really leaders in their particular capabilities. Like Progress is clearly like a leader in their capabilities here around CMS and DXP. And then you get into that long tail of just thousands and thousands of smaller companies. And there's a lot of variety in like what they're doing in that long tail. Don't get me wrong, some are startups that aspire to someday disrupt and become the next major platforms. And some of them will. But there's a lot that actually, that isn't really their primary goal. That their focus might be on a particular vertical that they do better than anyone. It might be tools in particular countries. One of the things that Franz has, even before we started collaborating, he would be working with leaders in a number of different countries to really understand the marketing technology products that were created, natively within those regions. And it was fascinating. You have tools that are like the absolutely most loved martech tool, in Italy or Poland, that don't have a presence outside of those countries, but in those countries beat the major platforms in their adoption. We have ecosystem software, tools that are being built around those major platforms. We have increasingly over the past 10 years, services companies are taking some of their secret sauce and bottling it, into productized offerings as well too. And so this is the very large thing, and I've cut it off. Normally I like have the long tail extend all the way out the screen and all the way down the block. I'll talk a bit about why this is a blank space at the moment. I guess this is the moment. For a long time, we seem to have been on this trend of, in the old build versus buy dichotomy, slowly moving towards buy. Partly because, I mean, my goodness, if you couldn't find a product you were looking for in that 15,000, I mean, like, can anybody invent it? You know, but for a whole bunch of reasons, right? People basically were feeling like, listen, this is not a competitive advantage, a comparative advantage for us. We're not software builders, we're marketers. I feel like there's a Star Trek joke in there, like, damn it, I'm a marketer, not a software engineer. But something's really interesting has started to happen over these past 5 years, which is the ability to create software has gotten dramatically easier. And again, just like in that long tail, there's a wide range of things that people are doing here. I mean, you know, you certainly have what I would call traditionally custom-built software, built by professional engineers, either in the IT department or product department. But then you have had, for a while, these like no-code tools that enable, maybe not professional engineers, but even like, you know, marketing ops or rev ops folks to be able to build, you know, smaller but very custom purpose-built tools or dashboards, little apps or automations. And then even further along is this possibility of these AI agents just creating software on their own, maybe without us even knowing it. And I know that probably sounds pretty science fiction-y. What if I told you that was already happening? Thousands, not hundreds of thousands of times, you know, right now. So let's see here. I guess this looks like Claude. Said, all right, go get a list. 20 most valuable companies in the world for the 10 most companies for the past 20 years. I wanted an area chart that's basically going to show me over this 20-year period the total valuation of tech companies relative to the total valuation of non-tech companies. You know, the sort of thing like we used to ask interns to do, and now we ask our favorite AI assistant to do, and it doesn't have any snarky response whatsoever. You know, and so in like less than a minute it comes back, oh yeah, okay, here you go. And then actually, because it's a really eager intern, it like comes back and it gives me a whole bunch of, oh, by the way, these are other stats I thought you might be interested in. And I'm like, yeah, we'll talk in your promotion time. Now, I wasn't doing any programming here, right? There was no actual software created. Or was there? And it turned out, actually the way this got built was Claude decided, okay, well, I can go out, I can pull this data, and I'm going to write a Python program to be able to pull that together and then display it in this form. And the only reason I knew this is because I was clicking around to get the little button of like, okay, show me exactly how this was built. Most people wouldn't have bothered to do that, nor should they have to. Now, you might want to argue that, okay, well, that's not really software, is it? Well, why not? Programming language, it gets run, and then the amazing thing is, it goes away. I mean, this is like on-demand disposable software, but it's on-demand disposable software that we aren't even realizing that software is created at all. And I think this is where we get into a really interesting space of how marketing technology stacks and the way we operate marketing technology is becoming now a very fascinating mix, you know, of these commercial products. And let me just state very clearly, I do not believe AI is going to replace, you know, the vast majority of the commercial martech landscape. I believe it is going to augment it and enhance it in all sorts of new ways. One really interesting side tip, and this is for the extra nerdy edition of this talk, is almost all of these products, both commercial and custom built, are all running on like basically 3 or 4 of the world's largest hyperscalers. There has been relatively little development that fully takes advantage of that. Just my side bet is, I bet here in the next 5 years, you're going to see this layer offer some really interesting ways in which we connect the dots across this. All right, but speaking of creating all this stuff, no code. That's like such an old-fashioned way of talking about this. Now we talk about vibe coding. Andrej Karpathy, who's one of the original folks in OpenAI, has gone off on his own. He's, for better and worse, the inventor of this term, vibe coding, where, I just gotta read this to you. You fully give into the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists. I'm not saying this guy's on drugs. I don't know him, I've never met him, but like, if you told me he was on drugs while he was writing this, I'd be like, okay, I'm fine with that. Building a project, a web app, but it's not really coding. I just see stuff and say stuff and run stuff and copy paste stuff, and it mostly works. And I'm sure that mostly works probably like terrifies anyone who actually has production responsibilities in this world. I can't help but think of it like, wow, man, this really is like some weird hybrid between like 2020's techno-optimism and like 1960s counterculture. I haven't quite wrapped my arm around it, but yeah, has this been the summer of vibes? Maybe. That being said, I can't help but poke a little bit of fun at this language because, you know, of course, as soon as vibe coding becomes a thing, everybody like jumps on the bandwagon. You've probably heard of things like vibe marketing. I mean, so vibe coding, I'm just saying, you know, we used to just call this no code, low code. Vibe marketing, every time I've had somebody explain it to me, I'm like, you mean like growth hacking? Which in its time was actually just a term we used to say like, oh, you mean like marketing? Vibe selling, yeah, a few people say that, which basically sounds like just an excuse for more hustle culture. Vibe finance, which we, you know, diplomatically would call creative accounting and, you know, the prosecutor would call fraud. And then pretty much vibe anything is what we just used to call shadow IT. So, you know, I mean, it's the new language, but, you know, we've been around with this for a while. But as much as I'm poking fun at this, I just want to give you a sample of like, what's actually doable here? So have any of you played around with Lovable, right? Okay. So I'm going to walk you through about 6 screens here that I've done absolutely no editing on. These are the exact steps I took and what happened. I asked it to, hey, build me a web app that's a customer support AI chatbot calculator. Input should be number of monthly support tickets, cost per ticket, average time to close a ticket, and chatbot resolution rate. Output should be monthly cost savings and improved support response time. Now, if you were, say, an AI customer service company and you're in marketing for that and you want to create a calculator on the website for this might be the sort of thing you would ask. And you'd probably file a ticket, you know, for an engineer to build it for you, and they would ignore that ticket for weeks. But here, you just sort of type this into Lovable. It comes back. I did cut off the thing because it's very chatty. Just like Claude there, it really does want to show me how hard it's working on my behalf, you know, but it's describing how it's designing it, here are the features, this is what I'm going to do. And about 30 seconds later, actually pops out a fully working AI support calculator I can embed on any website. Now, this is the first version. I'm like, come on, really? Having people fill out text boxes? That's so 2000 something. Can you convert the inputs from text boxes to sliders? Again, it's like, oh, all right, well, we got this whole refactoring. You can kind of almost imagine like asking a human software engineer to do that. They're like, oh my God, this is going to take a bunch of work, but I can do it for you, all right. You know, and it does it. And about 15 seconds later, it pops it out. It's like, okay, here you go. You've got your sliders. Happy now? It was literally a few minutes. And this thing actually works. Andrej Karpathy of, you know, vibe coding fame, actually a couple of years earlier made this statement, and I don't think he's wrong. I mean, the thing about the hottest new programming language is English. And while the things I'm focusing on today are things that non-engineers can do with this, I gotta tell you, I have a lot of friends who are like professional software developers, and the way in which they are now using AI, you know, as a way to accelerate their development process is this fascinating mix of English and then working directly in the code. It's wild. As an aside, Lovable had the distinction of being one of the fastest companies, the fastest company to ever get to 100 million ARR. I think it was something in like 6 months, something like that. I actually believe they've now been eclipsed, but interesting, the speed. Now, again, those of you who've played around with this stuff know it's got a range of suitability, particularly if you're not an engineer yourself. Jason Lemkin, who is the guy behind SaaStr and SaaStr Fund, quite an interesting character if you follow him on LinkedIn or whatnot. So he actually did a whole bunch of these, like he was using, I think, a combination of Replit and other stuff to like vibe code all sorts of stuff for his business. And he was kind of describing as he went through that process and started out in day one, he's like, oh my God, this stuff is amazing. By day 3, he's like pulling out his hair. I can't quite get this thing to work this right. And so he actually, after several weeks of experimenting with so many different things, came out with these things like, okay, these are the ways in which I find this actually works for non-engineers, and this is the place where I'm like, for the love of God, don't do it. And so I found that so interesting. I like took his post on that. I said, we should actually have this we should put this on a scale. I'm going to call it the Lemkin scale of vibe coding, where non-engineers can safely do stuff and where non-engineers should absolutely never tread. But here's the thing, like basic info web apps, no customer data. Actually that example I just gave you in Lovable, prototypes for validation, internal apps, dashboards, a lot of stuff works great. Like when you start getting into things where you're going to have something on the web that engages with people that might be collecting data, even if it's a relatively simple app, this whole issue of like, okay, compliant acquisition and use of data, this is something you want to have some guardrails and governance on. Once you start getting into actually trying to build complex apps, it gets messy fast. If you're thinking like, oh great, I'm going to throw out my Salesforce subscription and just vibe code it, yeah, don't do that. I joke with my friends at Salesforce that even Salesforce wouldn't attempt to be like vibe coding anything around Salesforce at this point. That's actually not true. Do you know, I just read this the other day, I'm like, I couldn't determine if they were serious, but they are serious. They released their own vibe coding tool to, like help you build Lightning apps in Salesforce faster. You know what they named it? Vibe Cody. Marketing. All right. I'm going to just come back to this for a moment. This is a tiny distraction, but these past couple weeks, OpenAI just released a torrent of announcements. But one of them was they had their new video model, and they're like, oh, now we've got a new video model. I swear to God, this must have been vibe coded by some of their engineers over a weekend. They're like, well, why don't we just build a social network? Sure, man, why not? Can't be that hard. So they launched this Sora, video network where you can put in your, it can capture your likeness and your voice, and then, you generate these little 10-second videos, and you can share with people and pull them in. It's actually both fascinating and disturbing at the same time. And this app, over the past couple of weeks, has become the #1 app in the Apple App Store. So I was playing around with it, and I was like, okay, well, maybe we can get a statement here on vibe coding.
Like, hey, man, I'm totally coding the vibes. I just think of a CRM, and it appears. Poof.
All right. Anyways, we're going to move on. We'll go back to the one Brinker on stage at a time thing. So I've actually thought about this, Lemkin scale for a while because I've been a long time proponent of no-code capabilities. So again, enable primarily people on the marketing ops side of things to be able to do custom capabilities on top of their stack. And frankly, for 10 years of there being no-code tools out there in the world, there has been debate of like, I don't know, should people really be able to like code their own, create their own apps? Like this really should just be done by the professionals. And to me, the thing is like, we're often not talking about the same kinds of apps. That Lemkin scale, one of the reasons I like it so much is it's like, yeah, there's a whole set of applications that have a level of sophistication, complexity that you do not want to no code or vibe code. But the thing is, there's a whole set of other potential apps that have never been built, because they were these simple little things that someone wanted to make their job easier, or to make their campaign better, or some little purpose-built thing, that it wasn't worth it to like hire engineers to like build it for that thing, and that this is what no code and now vibe coding, sorry, I always choke a little bit every time I say vibe coding, makes possible. And it's like, okay, well, when you're talking about really simple apps, when you're talking about apps that are mostly for internal use, particularly internal use within a particular team, if you talk about something that's only going to have a few users, maybe even just a user of one. This is something I create as an automation to help my personal workflow. When you have apps that have limited lifespan, they're going to get, oh, hey, listen, we're going to do this event together, and we want a little app to like run this fun game. Great, we create it, we use it for that, we toss it away. I mean, the extreme version of that was what we looked at with, Claude creating the, stock graph for me. The level of risk involved in the apps. I mean, again, once you start dealing with, customer data, particularly you start dealing with like PII, there's a whole bunch of regulated industries where, yes, you do not want to be no coding, vibe coding in that. There's a bunch of applications that just aren't in that quadrant. And then the last one, which in some ways to me is the most powerful, is like the degree to which something that we want to get built has ambiguity around it. Now, I've been a long time proponent of agile software development, the adoption of agile into marketing, known as agile marketing. And again, how that even came about was long ago. I guess I gotta be careful when I say long ago, when I was a kid. The way software was built was, all right, if you wanted a piece of software, you had to define very specifically all the requirements, exactly how you wanted, and then engineers would go off and they'd take weeks or months or whatnot to build that and deliver it. And almost always they'd deliver it and people would be like, oh, well, now that I see that, yeah, no, that's not actually what I want anymore. And the engineers would have to shoot themselves or shoot the person who had asked it. The whole idea of agile was to say like, okay, well, let's not just do this as all one big shot waterfall approach. Let's build a little bit, show it, get feedback, iterate, and evolve. Because really the only way in which people typically know what they want or how they want it to work is they have to see it, they have to feel something. And to me, this is one of the great things that no code and vibe coding is enabling, is for folks who probably aren't the ones to build the final application of what something needs. It's a way for them to have a sandbox to play around like, yeah, I want something to do this, and all right, I can point up. No, that isn't exactly the way I want it. Okay, let me try it. And no engineers are harmed in that process. They're going about actually having productive lives, but the person who wants this thing gets the chance to like go through this process of taking an idea out of ambiguity and bringing it into something that actually can be well defined. And to me, this is the area where most of these applications have never been built because there was just no mechanism to economically serve them. And this is what we're opening up, and this is where I think there's so much great opportunity for marketers to be marketing makers. Part of this involves this much deeper organizational shift from a world where we're used to handing things off to these specialists. And there's still a place in the world for the specialists. But that what we're trying to do is steadily decentralize more and more capability to empower people to self-service more of the things they want to do. And there are so many advantages to this. I mean, the most obvious one is speed. If you're running all these things, all of them through a centralized service bureau, you're almost always waiting in a queue. Decentralized self-service, you just do it. Bandwidth, right? I mean, again, it's a constrained resource. Well, okay, we don't necessarily have infinite resources here, but now a much larger set of people are able to participate in this. And whether it's like building a little no-code app or automation, or whether it's doing a data analysis where, there's just a whole set of these things, doing a creative asset, And this is where, to me, the real benefits, because we talk about these a lot, But the ones that I get excited about is I think it changes the game for creativity. Because although, with all due respect to the experts, in these centralized service bureaus, their creativity does tend to get narrowed in like their worldview and the way they think and the way they, execute. When you start to open up that capability for anyone to do these things, you actually get a lot more diverse ideas. Now, I'm not going to say all these ideas are great ideas, but some of them are. And some of the ones that are never would have come to life had we not enabled this capability. I also think part of this comes down to, we know we're in an environment where things are just changing so rapidly, and we all have so much that we're trying to figure out. We don't learn, most of us, by just reading about things, We have to get our hands on, we have to do stuff, And so all these innovations that were happening, when it's really only people in that centralized service who get to do that work, they're the really only ones who really learn how to do it, what's possible. By widely distributing this ability for more people throughout the org to learn, we are starting to make our organizations learning organizations, which to me becomes one of these like just meta-level competitive advantages a firm can have in today's world. This fellow, Linus Pauling, Nobel Prize winner, actually a 2-time Nobel Prize winner. He originally won a Nobel Prize for chemistry, and then later in his life won a Nobel Peace Prize. And as a chemist, he was insanely prolific. Like just the number of things like he would invent or be involved, it like blew people's mind. And there was an interview where a journalist had been asking, how do you do this? How do you come up with so many great ideas? And what's the best way to have a good idea is to have a lot of ideas. There's this recognition that even from his perspective, it wasn't like every single idea like that popped into his head was, a winner, It's just like this ability to explore and experiment with many, many things and to feel like you have that freedom and that power. That's where even if 80%, 90%, 95% of the ideas suck, it's how you then kind of find those that 5% that are like, wait, actually, maybe there's something here. I think of this in the form of like this long arc we've been on of the democratization of technology. And I think we've seen this in a lot of different fields, but certainly in martech, where, things start out, the only people who can use the technology and harness it properly are, frankly, experts in the technology. Then over time, it starts to become like, oh, well, all right, people, this would be the case where if you wanted anything marketing tech related, there was a day when it had to be done entirely by the IT department or no one. And then we started to get into this thing of like domain experts where like, okay, well, we could have, bring up this, where we started to have like a marketing operations group. Now, these generally were not as much technology experts as the folks in IT, but they had some of those capabilities, and they really understood how to apply those things in the domain of marketing. What's fascinating is as we've started to shift further along this curve where we've enabled power users, and I think some of these things you see here now with like these AI assistants, just any user in marketing is able to create things that previously, that silly little Python program for analyzing that stock data, it wasn't that long ago that would have been something, we better get a technology expert to write that program. And people do it and they don't even know it. And that is, to me, actually where things are really wild. That thing we saw with, Claude in the stock program. These are really simple early days of what's possible. The speed at which this technology is evolving is mind-blowing. And I am not going to be the one to predict what this world is going to look like 5 years from now. I am completely humbled by the pace of what's happening. I have no ability to predict anything anymore. But I'm pretty sure what we're going to be able to do with these things over the next 2, 3, 5 years, it's going to change the entire way in which we create and shape technology in running our marketing and our businesses overall. this is where stuff, I think, is going to have the greatest opportunity for what the future of marketing and martech can make happen. Now, there's something fun about this. I'm just checking on my time. Can I get a little nerdy? You're like, wait, we haven't already hit the nerdy part? Oh, crap. All right. I want to share something with you. This is another historic thing because it's getting turned on its head in an interesting way. Is there something that got known in software as Conway's Law? I'm forgetting the guy's first name. It was this guy, I think he was at IBM, and basically observed, and this was back in the 70s, the 80s, that the way in which software tended to get created is the software very often reflected the communications patterns of the people who were building the software. And so like the classic example is like if you were going to build like software that had three very distinct components, if it had three very distinct teams working to build it, you would end up with a piece of software that had three very distinct, components to what it was. I mean, it's like we build things that reflect who we are. And I'm going to bastardize that a little bit and say I think it's even more broadly just the companies that build software that reflects them. It reflects the way they think. It reflects the way, their philosophies of how they think a particular application should work. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Actually, as we've all been going through, depending on how you want to count, 10, 20, 30, 40 years of quote-unquote digital transformation, a lot of us were going into like new territory. We didn't necessarily know how this stuff should work. So having software companies be fairly opinionated, no, it should work this way, was actually a good thing. So the fact that software apps in many ways like embodied the thinking and the philosophy and the culture, of the software company that built it. Now, I coined something that I call inverse Conway's Law, which is while Conway's Law is software gets built, reflects the company that built it, I think we've been in a mode here as buyers and users of software that being on the other end of this has largely meant, when we get a piece of software, we now have to adapt the way our company works to reflect the way that software is structured. I'm not saying anyone in this room who's been a Salesforce admin would have any recognition of that dynamic, but you might. And this is true. I mean, we have built teams around the software. And even in many of these cases, evolved it for this is what we need to do to use this software without even necessarily is that absolutely the right process or flow for what makes our business unique? And this is what gets me really excited about that hypertail of us being able to customize and shape and build, more software of our own on top of these foundations, is we've been in a world where we're consuming inverse Conway's Law. All right, we just consume the app as it's given to us. Or, okay, well, maybe we can do some configuration within it, but we're still limited by what variables did that company think we should have the ability to configure. Folks started to open up APIs. You started to see, well, maybe we can do some customization on top of that. I think part of that, what you're seeing with all this no-code, AI, vibe coding stuff, they're starting to get to the place where okay, well, actually, whatever that software is, that's fine. Here's how we want our process and our automation flow to work. And we can create something that is unique to that. Here's the customer experience we want to create. We are designing these things that are unique to our business. Now, we're leveraging all this software. We're not having to reinvent all the wheel, but our ability to now shape the way this stuff actually works to better tailor to our business and to our customer experience. I think this is one of the most exciting things. And again, this is why I want to bring this home in the context of the shift from marketing managers having to manage a bunch of things that have been given to them to being marketing makers, to really have a role in shaping how does our business actually run process around marketing? How do we actually design customer experiences that are unique and have a true competitive advantage? I brought in a couple slides here only because, in talking to so many different companies, it's fascinating how much of a spectrum there is out there. On one hand, a number of enterprises I talk to who are like, that whole set of this presentation I just gave you terrifies the living crap out of them. Like, oh my God, no, do not, you are not allowed to talk to Scott, don't talk to our team and tell them that they can build their own apps. No, don't do that. And then you've got these other companies Shopify is like, listen, if you don't learn how to use AI to build your own stuff, you're fired. Zapier, who I respect a lot as a company, again, same thing. They're like, listen, just people need to be using AI in their jobs. And Wade Foster, the CEO there, had actually shared this really useful chart of we think about different levels of AI adoption maturity of how people use this. He mapped it up against this is what we expect people in HR to do, what we expect people in software development or product management to do. And it's some examples of marketing. And the unacceptable thing was you just run campaigns without any AI-driven A/B tests or content variants. You ignore AI tools for analytics, personalization, or audience insights. If that's how you're behaving, your review comes around, it's unacceptable. Capable, I'm going to use AI to summarize customer stories, maybe do drafts, potential social posts, starting to play around with it. What he would call adoptive, now I have actually, as a marketer, I've got my own little AI stack. And I'm doing things to run A/B tests maybe, and being able to show the impact, in CTR. I'm able to say, if I'm particularly doing, for a variety of different segments and audiences, auditing language. I've started to create my own prompt library, for my work, and then almost transformative. But people are building AI-driven campaign engines to personalize content at scale. They lead quarterly AI trainings, for others in their team or across the company. And again, where you are, where your company is at, be on any end of the spectrum. I'll be the first to say, Toby at Shopify and Wade at, Zapier are clearly on the far end of the spectrum. But I don't think this, if I had to place money in the stock market about which companies I think are going to thrive over the next 5 years, the companies that are terrified to death of letting their individual contributors, their ICs, leverage these tools, versus those who are like, no, this is really a core part of your job to figure out how to use this. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. Now, I felt when I brought in those things, I had to sit on the other side of a bunch of companies banning Gen AI, restricting generative AI. And not all of this is necessarily bad. There is quite a bit of things here. As it turns out, compliance matters. There are legal obligations in this world. But finding the balance between how do we give people tools and capabilities, but we're able to put enough of the right sort of guardrails, particularly around the data management side of it, to make sure we're not falling into trouble. This is a hard problem. There's not an easy answer to this, but this is the thing that as we make this shift from marketing managers to marketing makers, this is part of what we're helping our companies navigate. So I want to leave you with two things. One is, I feel okay, it's fine, you've talked at a high level, people should be empowered to do this stuff, but they should have guardrails for it. Do you mind explaining how? I want to share with you this framework that I've used over the years with no code and kind of feel adapts very nicely to this environment. I call it the 8 Ps because, hey, marketing history. If we had 4 Ps and that was great, 8 Ps has got to be even better, right? So, all right. 4 technology ones and 4 human organizational ones. The technology ones is you really do need platforms that are supporting these capabilities. Platforms that have the right APIs, platforms that have the right ability to do enforcement of guardrails. I actually call that second one this idea of partitions, particularly relevant, of course, in the CMS and DXP world. You can't have everybody with access to modify the homepage anytime they want, but giving people space in which they can create things that isn't interfering with other folks is incredibly powerful for that. You need really strong permissioning. Don't get me wrong, there's There's a certain amount of the Wild West that is out there in these tools. I'm not in the camp of advocating people should embrace the Wild West. I think when you open up access and these capabilities, you have to make sure you have the ability to enforce the permission, primarily on the data, but also on the services that they can execute with that. And the truth is, a lot of these platforms that are built well give you that capability. There's no excuse to being like, oh, well, we can't give them the AI things because they could just do anything. I'm like, no, if you've got the right platforms and you're configuring them the right way, they can't just do anything. You can put this in a controlled box. And then it's, all right, I was really stretching for P words. Perception. Yeah, all right, so I should have thrown that all out. But this idea of and you need people to monitor. This isn't a set it and forget it. This is very much an evolving thing, and you need to make sure that the technology platform is giving you that sort of, just monitoring capability, the audit capability. And again, a lot of these tools do. But it turns out, even if you get a platform that's great at all of those things, this still can go absolutely nowhere if you don't address the organizational side of it. And to me, the most important one on the org side, the people side, is permission. And this is different than permissioning. Permissioning is okay, access control lists. Permission is you're actually encouraging people to do this. Now, I think Toby at Shopify and Wade at Zapier have maybe gone to the other extreme where they're you do it or you're gone. There's actually, turns out there's a middle ground of do this, and let's actually celebrate it. Let's bring this into the culture of team meetings, where every month we're actually looking at the science fair of what are the things that, people on the team have done and built. What worked, what didn't work? What are the lessons we're learning from that? It's okay to try things and fail in that. This sort of encouragement, for a lot of companies, again, we just haven't had so much capability to do so much experimentation. It's actually been very hard to, this wasn't as much of an issue because it just, the capability didn't exist. But now that the capability does, we have to, as leaders, really think about evolving the culture to support that. People aren't born with this knowledge innate, at least not yet. What's the training you do on this? And again, just giving people oh, well, go read this, blog post, go do this two-step exercise, it's not enough. It's you need to have that sort of, learn by doing sort of thing. You need to support cohorts, the ability for people to mentor each other, to learn from each other. I mean, to get really serious about saying, listen, we collectively as a team, as a company, we are going to work together at learning to be better at this, and we're going to invest time and resourcing and energy into that. Principles. It is very hard to define from a policy perspective every single use case in an environment where part of what you're enabling is experimentation to find new use cases. But if you can get really clear on just a handful of hey, these are the most important principles we want to take to this. This is you're not allowed to use customer data, for an external app without this being reviewed and approved by, a security review. I mean, there's just a few things okay, yeah, just don't do that. I can experiment these other things. And then this last one, maybe this is in some ways almost like a summary of all of this, is you've got to develop a culture of passion around this. This is actually the reason why I don't fully like the way, the Shopify and the Zapier, things got presented, is because it's almost you do it or you're fired. I just don't think that's the environment in which we inspire the greatest, creativity and daring, among individuals. What we want to be trying inspiring is passion. What an amazing time to be in this job. I mean, it's scary because, listen, none of us know the future. We know things are changing. But on the other hand, this is also a time where for people to shape their careers, to shape their skill set, to help define what is the future of working in marketing going to look like. You don't have to be a passive, observer in this process. You can help be a contributor to shaping what that is, developing that passion. And you can get these 8 things, I think it can get you a lot on the way. So the last thing I'm going to leave you with here, Bruce the shark. Was it the 50th anniversary of Jaws recently? Just such a great movie. I mean, as far as people being eaten by sharks movies go. This is the big question. And I don't want to be flippant about it. I think it is a legitimate question. The optimistic view of it that I tend to go towards is, yeah, there's a whole bunch of roles that are going away. There's also an opportunity for a lot of new roles to get created. And that's not going to be the same in every industry. There are definitely, I mean, like, you even just think about the stuff with Waymo and autonomous cars and transportation. I mean, there's going to be industries that, yeah, it is outside of my domain, but I could not tell you how those roles will evolve. But marketing, I actually think there's a lot of opportunity here. And the way I frame it is I grossly oversimplify what marketing has been about, and I throw it into 3 buckets. There's like strategy and creative, which is always what people say marketing is. And we love this, we prize this, we put it on a pedestal. It's also, frankly, where not a lot of time gets spent. The vast majority of time that we've spent in marketing has been in the production and analysis work and support of that strategy and creative. Necessary, that's how you bring that to life. It's funny, we don't always value that work as much as we should, but it's where a lot of calories go. And to my martech and marketing ops friends here, frankly, marketing ops has also not really gotten a lot of love over the years. It's all right, yeah, I guess we need someone to do that stuff, but we haven't necessarily fully appreciated it, and we haven't resourced it in a lot of companies very significantly. The way I see AI evolving is, first of all, it is going to shrink the hell out of the time and talent that gets associated with production analysis. Now, there's a number of companies who look at that, and I do think we're already seeing these effects. They're like, great, well, a whole bunch of people I had here doing this and the investment I made on that, I can just get rid of that. I'll just send all these savings directly to my bottom line. Aren't I brilliant? The problem with that is every single company on the planet is going to get this benefit. This is a commoditized benefit. There is no competitive advantage here whatsoever. Maybe minor competitive advantage in the few months or year here while there's a little bit of arbitrage. But over the next few years, no advantage. The smart companies, I believe, are going to say, fantastic, this is no longer the bottleneck. We can now dramatically expand the range of ideas that we're willing to do. Going back to Linus Pauling, boy, the number of experiments and ideas we can try and the velocity at which you can try them. And as I went back to that thing even at the beginning with the slides, it's not just about reducing, making its speed faster and faster. It's the creative range of things that we can let people actually start to play with. So much here. This will never be commoditized. This is where tremendous competitive advantage can be something. And for people to be able to take this investment and leverage that to amp this up, I think is the future of marketing. But to do that, and to do that in a way that's going to be reliable and performant and not fall apart because somebody randomly vibe coded their CRM, we need martech and marketing operations to be a lot stronger, And the blending between, where is the dividing line here between what's in marketing and what's in IT and what's in data orgs? I actually think there's going to be a lot of fluid shift from one company to another, but the overall capabilities, I think that's where tremendous investment can pay off. So this to me is the future of what marketing makers are all about. I want to say thank you so much for having me. Franz and I, our most recent State of MarTech report that Progress very generously sponsored, it's available for free. You don't even need to sign up a form. Just grab the PDF and you can go. But why read about this when you can hear from really, truly one of the world's martech experts.
There's a lot of clients who are very dissatisfied with their tech solutions. And I'm wondering if the proliferation or this new sort of trend of vibe coding has changed expectations or beliefs around how easy it is to hyper-personalize something, even if they shouldn't be trying to do it. Like if it fits on your scale of actually you really do need to put a lot of thought and effort and development time into making this thing, but are clients coming into it thinking, no, it's so easy to make tech now, why is this not exactly what I want now and cheap?
Yeah, it's a great question. By the way, I caught your presentation this morning. Absolutely loved it. I think, let me answer that in a slightly sideways answer, which is the number one thing that holds back most companies from being able to harness a lot of this AI technology effectively today, frankly, is the data. I mean, at the end of the day, like these models are commodities. You know, the way in which you actually apply this technology in very useful ways in your business is you need to be able to first have the right data, have that data in a mode where it's clean, where it's compliant, where even if you have it clean and compliant and organized, can you actually pipe it to the right application in the right, time? And the truth is, for a lot of companies, the answer is no. This has been a long arc for us. We've been on like 10, 20-year journey of trying to get better in marketing about how we harness data. The only thing I can say is I think the potential rewards of what we can do with this, with AI, hopefully becomes more and more of the incentive for the investment there. But just trying to create your super hyper-personalized app and you're like, well, technically speaking, actually, we don't have any really useful data whatsoever we're feeding into that hyper-personalization or any sense then of how do we use the data, have the right guardrails around that. I mean, it's always nice to dream, but yeah, production is something else. Thanks.
Oh, Eve's got you. So I'm curious if you expect the 389, whatever it was, to go to start exploding because of all of this, and then is there churn in that long tail? Like, are people coming in and coming out because there's just too much?
Yes, well, and so this is actually one of the odd things about that landscape over the years is people are like, well, doesn't this thing consolidate? And the bizarre thing is, it absolutely does. In fact, actually, I did an analysis of a set of the stuff from 2010 to 2011. Almost all, I want to say 80% of the martech companies from that time frame either went away or were acquired or merged. So consolidation happens. And a bunch of companies just go out of business too. The thing is, as the barriers to software entry have gotten lower and lower, the number of entrants still has been exceeding the number of exits. Now, to the part of the question of do we expect that to get longer? Franz and I always have yearly bets on this. My belief is yes. I think if you use the criteria we've used to date of well, okay, if there's an actual app and you can go and buy it and you can install it, I do think, though, there is a bifurcation that we're going to see more and more of where, again, there are going to be these larger platforms and solutions we use as sort of the pillars and the foundations, of our tech stack. They provide the coherence, the stability to this. And then there's going to be, and I think there's always going to be tremendous forces of consolidation in that part of the market. But then on top of that, I think, boy, the range of things you can then plug into that. This integration thing has held us back for years. One of the most exciting things to me happening in AI is this something called the Model Context Protocol, MCP. Still very early, still very young. But people are like, this is really dumb that we have to build separate integrations for every single thing that we want to integrate. Couldn't we just have a standard for this? And you build a server and you build a client and it'll work with any client and any server. That's essentially the promise of MCP, and the companies that broadly seem committed to that, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, I think we'll see that, and I think then that gets you in a mode where, the long tail of all these specialized things, it actually becomes a lot easier then to plug them into your core systems. But now this is me fantasizing as much as anything.